Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, Will Power took the checkered flag at last weekend's Indy 500. Before the race, we took an in-depth look at its impact with IMS President Doug Boles and race historian Donald Davidson. Also this week, MatchBOX Coworking Studio continues to grow in Lafayette. South Bend International Airport continues the push for more service, and the 1150 Academy hits a milestone. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Hundreds of thousands of race fans descended on 16th in Georgetown last weekend for the 102nd running of the Indianapolis 500, won by Will Power. Ahead of the race, Indianapolis Motor Speedway President Doug Boles joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick to talk all about the race and its impact.
Big time is every year, this time of year, as we go into this 102nd running. In your opinion, Doug, what is the state of the Indianapolis 500?
You know, I think really from the 100th running in 2016 through last year's great crowd to a crowd that's going to be even better than last year this year, I think the state of the Indy 500 is really healthy. The competition's been great. Even the bumping this year, the controversy that it might have created just really goes to show you when you're getting more cars than the 33 there. I think the state of the Indy 500 is really great, and the biggest thing for me is the fans seem to be re-engaged with the event.
Yeah, and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway connects with the community in so many ways. Interesting, the pace car driver this year, Victor Oladipo.
You know, one of the things I think all of us as Hoosiers could be really proud about the way the Pacers represented us through the whole season and then into the playoffs, and to put Victor Oladipo into the car for us was as much saying thank you, Victor, for your help, but also saying thank you, Pacers and Indianapolis fans. We just love having somebody that represents Hoosier values kicking things off, and it's going to be a lot of fun for him. I think he's going to really enjoy it.
When you talk about momentum and positive things going on at the track, so many changes when you look at the entertainment venues and Legends Day and so many things. Can you point to anything in particular that is really driving that? So much of it is focused on not necessarily action on the track, but entertainment at the venue.
Well, the Indy 500 is unique in racing, certainly in IndyCar racing, in the sense that almost 70% of the customer who comes to the Indy 500 doesn't watch another race the rest of the year. They come because of the event and all of the things around it. And over the last few years, as we've been able to package this 3-day weekend of Carb Day, racing on track, to the concert, and then the concert that we have on Legends Day, plus the public drivers meeting, and then rolling into the race and Snake Pit, it really creates this must-attend weekend, not just for folks in Indianapolis, but around the country. We think it works really well, and it's highlighted, obviously, by this year, the 102nd running of the Indy 500.
Yeah, in terms of changes, the qualifying format changed about 5 years ago.
Yep.
And as you mentioned earlier, created a little bit of a controversy, but that sparks interest, too.
You know, and I think this weekend, this past weekend, you saw it when Bump Day had a lot of drama around who was actually going to get in the field, even bumping into the Fast 9. And then the Fast 9 was fantastic. And, you know, Ed Carpenter having his third pole. All those have come in this new format for him. It's pretty exciting. I sat in the grandstands for the Fast 9 with the fans, and I couldn't believe how into that part of the day the fans were, and I think it's working really well. And this is the first time we've seen the attendance on Sunday, new pole day, more than the attendance on Saturday, which used to be the old pole day. So people are beginning to think of Sunday's a day that we're going to set the field.
How difficult is it from a management standpoint to balance tradition and new stuff? The new stuff important, but boy, no place is more built on tradition than IMS.
100%. We are special because of our history and tradition, and there are certain things that you just can't change. Otherwise, you fundamentally change what the Indianapolis 500 is. So you have to figure out what those things that are central to our DNA are, protect them with all you've got, and then begin to make changes in the areas that aren't really true to our DNA. So that's the challenge we have. Even in Project 100, we dealt with that. We wanted to make sure that the changes we made still felt like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that people had fallen in love with.
I got to ask you about the new TV contract, ABC, after 50-plus shares this the last year, going to a big new contract with NBC.
So I'm 51. My entire life, the Indy 500 has been on ABC. And when you say Indy 500, you think ABC. Although I do think there's an opportunity with NBC, who understands IndyCar. They've been broadcasting a lot of the IndyCar events all year. They understand our brand. They understand what we're about. I think they're going to do a fantastic job. I can't wait to see how they tweak the product a little bit. And they're going to promote it all year long, which is really going to help us.
As we wrap up, how many people, I know you talk about numbers necessarily. There's been talk out there of 300,000 plus.
We will be the second largest city in the state of Indiana on race day. It will be the best crowd we've had, with the exception of the 100th running in 2016, almost in 15 or 20 years. So we are really excited. It is one of those triple digit, it's going to be a great crowd.
It's going to be a great day. Doug Boles, the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you.
Still to come, a push for more service at the South Bend International Airport, and using the race to spotlight a sometimes taboo health topic. But first, Since opening 4 years ago, MatchBOX Coworking Studio in downtown Lafayette has grown to 300 members and 40 sponsors. The space is managed by Operations Manager Amanda Findley and Community Curator Emily Carter. They came in studio to talk about the coworking space's growth and goals.
Amanda, I'll start with you. A lot of co-working spaces, which is pretty cool, around the state of Indiana. Really been on a growth mode for the last several years. As you look at the MatchBOX, describe it as typical co-working space with a twist, right?
Yeah, sure. So we have traditional co-working space for anyone who can work from anywhere. So entrepreneurs, freelancers, really a variety of sectors, but we also offer a rapid prototyping lab, so we call it our MatchBOX Maker Lab, and there are some prototyping and IoT capabilities in there for members.
Talk about growth, because 4 years in now, and the numbers are pretty amazing. So obviously you're getting a lot of traction.
Yeah, it's a great time for entrepreneurship in Greater Lafayette in general. Our membership is growing every month. We're seeing increases in usage as well. So we recently calculated usage and found that we've had more total users in our space than the entire population of Greater Lafayette. So we're seeing that the community is really gravitating toward co-working.
Well, the membership, I know since the two of you have been there in 3 years, has more than doubled, which is impressive. Emily, talk about the events, and in particular, Paul Singh, as I mentioned, international venture capitalist. Back again in Lafayette and West Lafayette. What's that all about?
Yeah, so we brought Paul to Lafayette first last fall for Entrepreneurship Week, and this year we've partnered with him on our pitch night event. It's called T-minus 6.6, and what's great about bringing Paul back continuously is that he gets more familiar with our community and the startups that are here and the exciting things that are happening in our community specifically, and he's bringing with him entrepreneurs who he's invested in and have some particular insights to share with our particular community. So this month he's bringing Roger Hansen with him. Roger Hansen started Skater Trainer, and Skater Trainer is a physical product that you put on skateboard wheels that helps train your muscles to do tricks before you're actually moving down the sidewalk or street, as the case may be. And so he went from creating composite materials to doing Skater Trainer full time. And so what we're hoping he'll be able to share with our community is how he did that and what he found particularly helpful as he was moving through that entrepreneurial journey.
He firmly believes there's a lot of innovation, a lot of cool things happening outside of Silicon Valley, outside of the coast, in Midwest communities like Lafayette, West.
He sees a lot of interesting startups taking root in the Midwest in particular. And what's different about startups in the Midwest that you can't find on either coast, and particularly in Silicon Valley, is startups that are working with a work ethic and a sense of get it done that's unique to the Midwest. It's not about who you know in the Midwest, it's about what you can do. And I think that he sees a lot of value in exploring that here with us.
Amanda, talk about the connection and the importance of Purdue University and what that means to the growth at MatchBOX and the growth of innovation and entrepreneurship in the region.
Yeah, you mentioned Greater Lafayette Entrepreneurship Week earlier. That's a collective event that we host throughout that ecosystem that's happening. So alongside the Anvil and Purdue Foundry and Purdue Rail Yard. So we get to work together to do great things. Tonight, or at T-minus 6.6, one of the pitches is someone who recently won a pitch competition at Purdue called HaptImage, and they're making images instantly accessible to individuals with visual impairments. Our other is a recent Purdue grad with an engineering degree.
Wow, lots happening. The MatchBOX co-working space, the Lafayette, West Lafayette region. Amanda Findley, Emily Carter as well. Thank you both very much. We'll have you back on.
Thank you so much.
Talk about growth again.
Later in the podcast, infertility awareness at the Indy 500. But now, South Bend International Airport has launched efforts to add service and secure something it has never offered, a nonstop international flight. The airport has launched Project Propel, aiming to boost the local economy through more direct flight options. Executive Director Mike Daigle joined us with more.
As I said, lots going on at South Bend International. First of all, on the international front, I know you've got an initiative going to get some international routes. Talk about what that's all about.
So a number of years ago is when we started going down this path, and what we decided is we were going to build this three-legged footstool. And so the three legs of the footstool is commercial aviation, corporate aviation, and cargo. And so the corporate aviation has taken off really, really well. And it started last June. We're coming up on about 11 months of that. The The expectations have been significantly higher than what we expected. So now that's on the works. The commercial aviation, which is the air carriers, the flights are doing on, those are working, we're working on diligently to do those things. We're working on both leisure destinations and business destinations that make sense for our community.
Well, you've got big news, too, in terms of new routes going, starting soon to both Dallas and Charlotte, two very popular destinations.
We do. American Airlines, just a great ad for our community and for the state when you think about it. 2 daily nonstops to both those large hubs. American's 2 largest hubs in the country, and so we're excited to make those connections. And
part of that, you're partnering with the state of Indiana. There's some money there that has certainly helped for new routes here in Indianapolis and around the state, and that's part of the deal.
It did. The legislature was able to pony up some dollars into this pot of money. I know the Indianapolis airport has taken part of that too, and with the legislature and the governor's assistance, we've been able to do this. And there's some incentives that are being offered to American Airlines to increase their services.
All right, I think this is a very interesting initiative you have going on. It's called Project Propel. And essentially, you're going to the community, the region there, especially businesses, saying, hey, use South Bend International more instead of going to, say, Chicago, right?
That's exactly what it is. And so we know that when business people are traveling, they're making economic decisions. But a lot of folks aren't really taking in the true total cost of travel. You can park at our facility for about $9 a day versus about $24, $25 a day, or even more in Chicago. The time to travel back and forth, the cost to travel, the time lost in productivity. We've talked to an awful lot of businesses who look at the productivity lost, the time lost, and in some cases, they're going back and they're taking that hotel stay the night before so they can get up early and travel. We've talked to literally 50 to 80 businesses so far, and every one of them has agreed.
Wow.
They want to do this because they know that it's in their best interest. The more they use South Bend International Airport, the more that seats will be added, more flights will be added, more destinations nonstop will be added.
Yeah, you mentioned other communities have done similar initiatives, Grand Rapids is, for an example, and with real success.
Yeah, Grand Rapids did this, and the difference between us and Grand Rapids is Grand Rapids actually asked communities to pony up some dollars to actually then go out and motivate airlines to add service and stuff. We're not doing that. We're saying use the service there is, and the airlines will add more capacity. And we know that with American adding this new service, we've seen some increases in the number of seats Delta's put in the market. United's adding a second daily New York flight here very shortly, and they're adding another Chicago flight. And so competition works.
Yeah, very good. Mike Daigle is the executive director at South Bend International Airport. A lot happening certainly at South Bend. Mike, thanks for coming down. We look forward to following your story.
My pleasure.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, and a coding academy marks a milestone. But first, one of the drivers in last weekend's Indy 500 was Jay Howard, who, along with his wife Courtney, fought a long battle with infertility. The couple partnered with Midwest fertility specialists to use the race to spotlight the common but not often talked about issue. Courtney Howard and Midwest fertility specialists physician Robert Culver joined Barb Lewis in the business of health.
So Courtney, I think the obvious first question is, how is Hudson doing?
Oh, he is wonderful. He brings so much joy to our lives, and as Jay and I like to say, no day is a bad day with Hudson.
Well, you and Jay go beyond just being advocates. I mean, you're devoted and very active advocates. What's really the driving motivation to do as much as you do?
You know, I think because when we were going through infertility, our struggles, you know, we didn't really have anybody to talk to or anybody to share our story with or our experiences, and we just feel like it's taboo to talk about it. And so we want other couples struggling to know that they're not alone. 1 in 7 couples are struggling with infertility. So we said from day one that if we could just help one couple, then we've done our job.
And Dr. Culver, what has changed since Hudson came into this world?
Oh my goodness, in vitro fertilization has changed dramatically to the point that we're doing things totally different today than we were doing even 3 years ago. Now we can actually do genetic testing of embryos so that when we place an embryo back inside a woman's uterus, we know that it's genetically normal. we know that we only have to place one in, which is a huge thing because now we don't have to worry about the twin pregnancy rates. It used to be that the twin rate with in vitro was 30% because we had to put in 2 or 3 embryos. And the reason is we didn't know what we had. We didn't know we had a normal embryo or an abnormal embryo. And actually, if a patient was older, we'd put in 4 or 5 embryos depending upon if they were over 40. Now, doesn't matter. Age 30, age 40, we place in 1 embryo. It's chromosomally normal. Pregnancy rates are 70%. Miscarriage rate drops down from about 18% to 7%, and people get pregnant, they're happy. And the other great thing is that now we don't, with the risk of twins being down, we don't have to worry about that aspect, which is huge. I mean, generally 60% of twins are delivered prematurely, 40 to 60% end up in a NICU. I mean, twins are not a great thing. It sounds fun, but it's not really that great from a health standpoint.
Okay. And so Courtney, you say you want to break the taboo. You want more people to talking about it. But what do they want? What do you want them to know about your experience and Jay's experience with this?
You know that there are a lot of fertility clinics out there, and there is help. And to be your biggest advocate, and you know, a lot of times people contact us, and they're scared to go to a fertility clinic because they don't necessarily want to hear maybe what's on the other end, but to that point, I mean, there is help, and there is wonderful people like Dr. Culver and the staff at Midwest Fertility. And if they are currently under supervision in a fertility clinic and maybe they just don't feel comfortable or they feel like, you know, something's not right, to go get a second opinion.
Mm-hmm. So is the success rate then, Dr. Culver, better? You had mentioned all the advancements in the last 3 years. Is the overall, you know, success rate? Can everyone get help?
Well, you know what's really interesting is that a lot of times you come into a fertility center and you don't really know why you can't get pregnant. Mm-hmm. And as we go through the workup, we find out different things. And we find out, oh my goodness, we might need to use a sperm donor. We might found out I didn't have any sperm, or we might need to use an egg donor, or we might need to use a gestational carrier. You find out things you had no clue about. But the great thing is if a couple continues with the investigation and continues to work hard and kind of stay in there and not lose hope, most of the patients end up conceiving and having a baby, which is really cool. And I think that's the best part of this. It's just hanging in there. And like what Courtney and Jay did, they hung in there. Yeah. And a lot of people just give up. And it's not easy to continue because you got emotional issues, financial issues, so it can be really tough. But I have to say, if there's anything I can say, just hang in there. And most of the time, we're successful.
Well, thank you for the story behind the logo. Now we understand more. So thank you so much, both of you.
You're welcome.
Later in the podcast, a historical perspective on the 500 and a special edition of The Insiders. But first, 1150 Academy, the nonprofit coding school in Fishers, recently graduated its 200th student and received more than $300,000 in grants from Indie Women in Tech. President John Qualls and Chairman Scott Jones spoke about the importance of non-traditional education programs in our Eye on Education segment.
John, first of all, 200 graduates, so 4-year-old institution, if you will, 1150, proof of the concept is working, a big milestone.
It's absolutely working. We were actually looking at the numbers last year. Before our students came to our program, as a group, they were making $1 million. After the program this year, they'll make $4 million.
Wow.
It's a pretty big return.
Is there a typical student? Talk about the kinds of students, the kinds of people you're graduating at 1150.
We like to think of it as three groups, right? The unfound, we all have those kind of young folks who haven't found that first passion. So the unfound, the unsatisfied, those who are looking for that career change, and what we like to think of the underskilled, those who are looking for skills to kind of change the mobility of their career.
Yeah. Scott, talk about the idea behind this, how this was formed.
So 4 years ago, started it in my home, actually, in the theater, and we put people in for a week immersion class, and they come out the end and they fall over at the finish line, right? But it was working. We saw that it was working. And then John came in about 3 years ago, and he's really ramped this thing up. Now the immersion program is a more livable 12 weeks. But what's really interesting, he was talking about the outcomes in terms of compensation. We have an 80% graduation rate, which is way off the charts compared to any other institution in Indiana. And we have a 92% placement rate of those graduates who are then getting the last class average salaries of $70,000 and a signing bonus of $2,500 cash.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really amazing what has been built here, and a lot of credit to John and his team.
Yeah, and this fits obviously right into that skills gap, that tech, the need in the workforce. And again, you're talking about salaries that pay well above the
Yes,
city
and
average.
by the way, that 70 is starting salary, and we've got graduates that are into the 100,000 plus, and these are kids, coming out of high school, those who have even done 4 years of college, some of which have CS degrees or history or political science or music, liberal arts students. You said 50% of people, need to know coding coming in these next decades. It's good to know coding, even if you never write another line of code, right?
Yeah. And in terms of that pool of potential students or graduates, you're now able to receive GI Bill funding, right, or monies from the GI Bill.
Yeah, that's right. We just got that in the last month. We can now take GI funds, which actually pays all the tuition and their living expenses. There's 12 to 14,000 folks here in Indiana, right? For reserve active military National Guard that we could really help.
Yeah, as we wrap up too, you continue to grow in Indiana and elsewhere. Talk about growth opportunities.
Yeah, we've done some things in Kentucky, and we hope to, in the next 4 months, we'll see what we're doing in Alabama.
Other states are watching what we're doing, and they're jumping in to say, we want to have an 1150 Academy, and so they're asking us to come to their states. And we're looking to expand. We're talking around the state in other communities where we can allow them to have these quick outcomes, right? To take people from, maybe not zero, but, 20 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour and accelerating.
Getting into good paying jobs as well. 1150 Academy, major presence at Launch Fishers, in Fishers. John Qualls, the president at 1150. Scott Jones, the chairman. Thanks very much.
Donald Davidson is the historian for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the only person to hold that kind of position on a full-time basis for any motorsports facility in the world. He's perhaps best known for his radio show, The Talk of Gasoline Alley, which airs throughout the month of May in Indianapolis. He joined Bill Benner for Inside Indiana Sports.
Let's start off talking about the ambassador role. Really began with the run up to the 100th running, and now it's become a fixture. You and former Greencastle Mayor Mike Harmless.
Absolutely, who's frequently in this studio. Yes, I've been doing talks on my own for decades, but the idea was Allison Millington said, let's see if we can do an event for the 100th running in all 92 counties. So that was accomplished. I didn't go to all of them, but I think I went to 72. And out of that, we did library visits, and some of them were full-blown talks. And it went so well, they said, let's do that again. So for the last 2 years, we've done that, and we just wound up, we did 39 this year, and 5 of them were out of state. But we had really good crowds. We averaged 92, I think it was. And everywhere we went, there's race fans. And I get a big kick out of the fact that so many mayors around the state are race fans.
Yeah. And you've even taken it beyond the state's borders. I mean, you've gone to Lexington and Dayton, some other.
We did that in the past. This year we went to Toledo, and then we did Louisville, Kentucky, and then we did Decatur, Illinois, Champaign, and Danville, Illinois. And the funny thing is, we went to Boonville, Indiana, and that was further than Louisville.
I know you get this question when you do these talks, but you got a couple of favorite moments from...
for me personally?
Yeah, for you.
When I first walked in the gate in 1964, which was a long time ago, and but when that was the realization of a dream that I had, strived for 7 years, and to arrive at the track and then meet all the people and have them be so gracious. And Sid Collins, I owe such a huge deal of gratitude because he took me under his wing immediately, and I'm still doing what I dreamed that I might do when I was a teenager.
Everybody talks about Indy. They usually bring up Spin to Win with Danny Sullivan.
Yeah, great moment.
But and of course, she's back, Danica.
That's huge.
Major thing.
Yes. In fact, she's kind of, I think, underrated. What's fascinating about her is that there was so much attention in 2005, but she actually had a better finish in 2009. She was third. She drove in the Indianapolis 500 7 times, and 6 of them resulted in a top 10 finish. So her average is like 8.3 or something.
Again, we can't thank you enough for making time.
Thank you.
By the way, folks, Talk of Gasoline Alley is must listen to
Thank
radio.
You, Bill.
And I always learn something.
Thank you, Bill.
You're a legend.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.